Hello, welcome to Return to Life. Today, we will listen to a story about the cracks in life where people have felt weak, full of doubt, yet kept moving forward. If you are standing between exhaustion and hope, this story may be for you.
The surgical suite at Northwestern Memorial Hospital buzzed with quiet urgency. Stainless steel instruments gleamed under stark fluorescent lights. Machines beeped in slow rhythm, their blinking lights casting sharp shadows on sterile white walls. On the operating table, 27-year-old Lauren Miller lay still, her right arm extended above her head and strapped gently but firmly to a padded board. A blue surgical drape framed her exposed underarm, already prepped with antiseptic and glistening faintly under the lights. To an outside observer, it might have seemed like a routine procedure, but the faces of the surgical team told a different story. Dr. Marcus Hale, head of dermatologic surgery and a leading expert on hidradenitis suppurativa, leaned forward slightly as he examined the site. His eyes, usually calm and clinical, narrowed as he probed the area with gloved fingers. What he saw made him pause, just for a beat, just enough for the nurse standing beside him to glance up. He'd seen many cases of HS in his 15 years of practice. Chronic inflammation, abscesses, fistulas, scarring. But this was something else. Tunnel system is extensive, he murmured to the attending nurse, who immediately made a note. He gently pressed on a raised nodule, and 3 inches away, pus oozed from a separate opening. Another gentle touch revealed a sinus tract stretching even farther, like an underground river no one had mapped. It was like someone had carved a subway system under Lauren's skin, using infection and inflammation as their tools. A dense, tangled network of infected tissue that had been spreading silently beneath the surface for months. He looked down at Lauren, her face partially covered by the oxygen mask, features relaxed in anesthesia. She had no idea how bad it had gotten. Dr. Hale had briefed her earlier, carefully explaining the procedure, but even he hadn't expected this level of damage. "We're going to have to remove all of it," he said quietly. "The abscesses, the tracts, the necrotic tissue, everything." Hours earlier, Lauren had walked into this hospital on her own 2 feet. She hadn't cried, she hadn't panicked, but her eyes had betrayed her fear. She'd sat on the hospital bed, arms slightly raised, as she showed Dr. Hale what had been festering beneath her skin. She'd whispered, "It started as a pimple," as if confessing a sin. And now, she was here, about to lose a piece of herself. The anesthesiologist adjusted the fourth. A monitor beeped softly. Dr. Hale took one final breath before giving the nod. "Let's begin." 7 months earlier, Lauren Miller had been living the life she thought she'd always wanted. She had a job that made her proud, a stylish apartment in downtown Austin, and a curated Instagram feed that showed off everything from perfectly plated brunches to radiant selfies with glowing skin. She worked as a store manager at a luxury cosmetics boutique, one of those places where the lighting was always flattering and the scent of rosewater floated permanently in the air. The job was demanding, but it fed her obsession with aesthetics. Lauren believed in looking polished at all times, effortlessly flawless, like the women in beauty campaigns. She had a 20-step skincare routine. She shaved daily. She exfoliated religiously. She wore sleeveless dresses and highlighter that caught the light just right. Maintenance was a lifestyle, and Lauren wore it like a badge of honor. She was also seeing someone. Ryan Clark, tall, confident, with that slightly rumpled business casual look that said he didn't have to try hard. They'd met on Hinge. First date was coffee, second date was tapas and red wine. By the third date, Lauren had already envisioned what their couple photos might look like. Everything seemed to be working. Lauren woke up each day with purpose. She controlled her appearance, her routine, her image. And then, one morning in March, as she stood under the hot stream of her shower shaving her underarms like she always did, she winced. Just a tiny pinch, a sting under her right arm. She rinsed the razor, inspected the area in the fogged mirror. A red bump, not even the size of a pea, sat just above the crease of her armpit. It wasn't uncommon. Ingrown hairs happened. She dabbed on some antibiotic ointment and told herself it would clear up in a day or two. It didn't. It would be easy now to trace everything back to that single moment. But at the time, it barely registered. She had things to do, shelves to restock, influencers to greet in store. The bump would go away. She'd dealt with them before. No big deal. Lauren didn't know that under her skin something was already growing, not the bump, but a maze. a hidden system of inflamed tunnels, building slowly, relentlessly, as days turned to weeks. And the more she tried to control it, shaving, scrubbing, covering it up, the deeper it burrowed. By the time she would return to this same hospital, 7 months later, she would no longer be the woman who posted perfect selfies. She would be the woman with the scar, the woman who lost a piece of her body to something she didn't even know existed. But that moment hadn't come yet. For now, she lay silent on the table, unaware of what was being taken from her. Before everything unraveled, Lauren Miller's life was, in a word, curated. She had spent years sculpting her daily routine, her appearance, her surroundings, into something that felt polished, controlled. Her apartment was a soft blend of white, blush, and sage green, with gold accents and eucalyptus bundles in vases that she replaced weekly. Her closet was organized by color and season. Her mornings began at 6:15 a.m. sharp, not because she had to, but because she chose to. She liked having time to shower, double cleanse, exfoliate, tone, serum, moisturize, apply SPF, roll her face with a jade roller, and air dry her long, highlighted hair in perfect waves. Time to match her outfit to her mood, and her earrings to the gold hardware on her shoes. She didn't consider it vain. She considered it discipline. Lauren worked as the store manager at a luxury beauty boutique on South Congress, where the floor was always gleaming, the fragrance was a heady mix of rose and bergamot, and customers were often influencers or women who looked like they belonged on the covers of fashion magazines. Her staff adored her, partly because she led with confidence, and partly because she always looked like she had her life together. Her appearance wasn't just part of her identity, it was her armor. If she looked perfect, she was perfect. That was the unspoken rule. Lauren had grown up watching her mother, Carol Miller, reapply lipstick before answering the door, even if it was just the UPS guy. There was pride in presentation. "You don't get a second chance to make a first impression," her mother would always say, and Lauren had taken it to heart. To the outside world, Lauren's life looked easy, successful, stylish, surrounded by beautiful things. Even her Instagram feed was a vision, filter light, pastel-toned, with captions that balanced just enough vulnerability to feel relatable, but not enough to seem messy. The truth was, she worked hard to maintain the illusion, but she liked it that way. She also liked Ryan Clark. They'd met in late January, just after the holidays, when she had finally reinstalled Hinge after deleting it for the third time. He was one of the first matches she'd actually wanted to meet in person. Ryan was tall, with dark wavy hair and a smile that didn't feel performative. He worked in marketing for a tech startup, but didn't seem obsessed with the grind. Their first date was a simple coffee at a plant-filled cafe near Zilker Park, and they ended up talking for nearly 3 hours. By the third date, she'd invited him up to her apartment for a glass of wine and watched, heart fluttering, as he complimented her framed art prints and perfectly fluffed throw pillows. Ryan was funny, thoughtful, and surprisingly attentive. He noticed when she changed her nail color. He opened doors without making a show of it, and he always walked her to her car, even when she insisted she was fine. For the first time in months, Lauren allowed herself to imagine something real, not just dating for fun, but something lasting, a relationship that could stretch beyond the surface. She didn't tell anyone, not even Sophie, her roommate, but she'd already mentally booked them a weekend trip to Santa Fe. She could see it: cozy Airbnbs, wine tastings, sun-drenched selfies. Her life, at that point, was running like a well-oiled machine. Work was busy but satisfying. She had just finished overseeing a complete merchandising revamp at the store. Sales were up. Her district manager had casually mentioned a potential regional role opening in Dallas by the fall. She felt seen, respected, on track. Even her body felt strong. She was hitting her yoga classes 3 times a week, eating cleanish, and tracking her steps on her Apple Watch. Her skin, her pride and joy, was luminous. Compliments rolled in regularly. "You're glowing," customers would say. "What's your secret?" And she'd laugh and say, "Water and serums," though in truth it was dedication, precision, control. Lauren had always believed that if she did everything right, if she followed the rules, treated her body with care, stayed ahead of the game, then things would work out, that life would reward her consistency. That illness or anything chaotic and ugly would pass over her like a storm skipping a house with all the lights on. So when she felt that first twinge under her arm, she didn't think twice. It was a Wednesday. The air was dry. She just stepped out of the shower and was reaching for her deodorant when she felt a slight sting in her right armpit. She leaned into the mirror, inspecting the area. There it was. A tiny red bump, slightly raised, no bigger than a lentil. She touched it gently, tender but not alarming. Her first thought was ingrown hair. She had waxed 2 days earlier, as she always did before date nights. It wasn't uncommon. She'd had them before, a little redness, some swelling, and then it would disappear in a day or two. She dabbed on some tea tree oil and moved on. There was a team meeting that morning, and she had no time for distractions. Over the next few days, the bump remained. She switched to a looser blouse, something breathable. She upped her water intake, exfoliated a bit more, and avoided deodorant for 24 hours. She Googled underarm bump after waxing and found comfort in a sea of forums filled with similar stories. It's probably folliculitis, one user had written. Try warm compresses and Neosporin. She tried both. Still, the bump persisted. It wasn't huge, not grotesque, but it hadn't vanished either. By the end of the week, it had started to ache more when she lifted her arm. It tugged when she reached overhead. She avoided yoga that Saturday, telling herself she needed rest. The next week, another bump appeared, this one slightly below the first, then another, like satellites orbiting a center star. Still, she didn't panic. Not yet. She was too busy, too optimistic. And besides, who had time to run to urgent care over a few stubborn ingrowns? Not Lauren. Not when everything else in her life was finally falling into place. So, she added an extra swipe of concealer under her eyes, applied a bit more highlighter to distract, and went about her days as if nothing was wrong. But something was. By the second week, Lauren started to avoid reaching for anything on the top shelf. The ache under her right arm had graduated from a dull soreness to a pulsing discomfort. When she stretched too far or lifted her arm quickly, it felt like something deep in her skin was tearing, like a bruise hidden under layers. And still, she told herself it was nothing. Just irritation. Maybe a clogged pore. Maybe a minor infection. Nothing she couldn't fix with the right regimen. She swapped her usual razors for a fresh box and threw out the old deodorant. She added warm compresses to her nighttime routine and started rotating antibacterial creams. Her bathroom counter began to look more like a first aid kit than a vanity. But the bumps didn't go away. They multiplied. One morning, after stepping out of the shower, she caught her reflection in the mirror and paused. There were now 3 visible bumps under her right arm, clustered together like some angry constellation. The skin around them looked taut, slightly swollen, and darker than the surrounding area. When she pressed on the central nodule, a sharp pain shot through her side. She flinched, releasing it immediately. They weren't acting like pimples. They weren't even acting like boils. There was something different about these. The way they sat under her skin, the way they didn't come to a head. They were deep, stubborn, and connected. That's when she noticed the band of tissue linking them. She traced it gently with her fingertip, a firm, almost cord-like sensation under her skin, running from one bump to the next. It wasn't visible to the eye, but she could feel it, a connection, like something had formed a tunnel beneath the surface. Her stomach turned. Still, she didn't panic. She couldn't afford to. Work was intense. Her store had just launched a new skincare line, and the media buzz meant back-to-back customer appointments and endless product trainings. Lauren threw herself into it with even more intensity, using her busyness as a shield. She began wearing sleeves, again. Light sweaters, draped cardigans, even in the unseasonably warm March afternoons. Sophie noticed but didn't press. Lauren was grateful. Sophie had always been the kind of friend who gave space when needed. And Lauren? She needed a lot of space lately. It wasn't just the physical pain, it was the mental noise. The constant awareness of her underarm. The way her clothes brushed the area. The fear of raising her arm too high. The fear of leaking. Yes, leaking. By week 3, one of the nodules had begun to drain, just a little. A thick, yellowish fluid that stained the inside of her blouse one afternoon while she was restocking lipsticks. She had rushed to the bathroom, mortified, blotting at the stain with paper towels, her heart hammering. The smell, subtle but distinct, clung to the fabric, even after she sprayed it with perfume. After that, she started carrying gauze pads in her purse, just in case. At night, when she was alone, she finally turned to Google. Recurring bumps underarm won't go away. Multiple lumps in armpit after waxing, ingrown hair that leaks pus, painful underarm abscess. The search results were a mess of possibilities, most of them relatively harmless. folliculitis, ingrown hairs, sweat gland infections, blocked pores. Several forums reassured her, it's totally normal, just part of shaving. Some recommended natural remedies, apple cider vinegar compresses, turmeric pastes, coconut oil rubs. But buried deeper in the results, among the grainy photos and Reddit threads, one term came up again and again: hidradenitis suppurativa. She clicked. The first thing she saw was a photo that made her recoil, a grotesque image of someone's underarm covered in large, ruptured boils, open wounds, tunnels snaking across swollen skin. She closed the tab immediately. Nope, she said out loud to herself. That is not me. She tried a different site. This one more clinical, less dramatic. Hidradenitis suppurativa, or HS, is a chronic inflammatory skin condition characterized by recurring abscesses, painful nodules, sinus tract formation, and eventual scarring. Most commonly affects areas of the body with apocrine sweat glands, armpits, groin, under the breasts. She kept reading. The cause is not fully understood, but is believed to involve follicular occlusion and an abnormal immune response. Risk factors may include genetics, mechanical friction, and hormonal changes. HS is often misdiagnosed and under-recognized. Chronic, she whispered, the words sticking in her throat. Her chest tightened. She clicked back to the image tab, her curiosity overwhelming her disgust. She needed to be sure, she needed to know what she wasn't, but the more she looked, the more unsettled she became. Some of the milder cases didn't look so different from hers. Clusters of bumps, inflamed skin, small drainage points. The only difference was time. Progression, tunnel formation. That phrase haunted her. She closed her laptop and sat in the dark for several minutes. Her body felt foreign, like something had turned against her. Like something was growing without her permission, in places she couldn't see. Still, she told herself it couldn't be HS. It was rare. Only a small percentage of the population got it. Most people who had it looked much worse than she did. She was still in control. She was still Lauren Miller. This was just a hiccup. She doubled down on self-care. Switched to fragrance-free everything. Bought new razors, new washcloths, a new set of organic cotton bralettes to reduce friction. She even tried going a week without shaving. That was hard. She felt like she was giving up part of her identity, but if it helped, she would do it. It didn't help. By early April, her right underarm had become a battlefield. 5 distinct nodules, 2 actively draining. The connecting tissue between them felt more solid now, more like ropes than threads. When she pressed on one, another would swell. Sometimes fluid would emerge from a different point altogether. One night, after showering, she stood in front of the mirror, one hand lifting her arm, the other gently tracing the paths beneath her skin. She could see the faint outline of what looked like ridges. She mapped them with her eyes, connected them in her mind. She pressed one spot gently. A bead of fluid rose from a site nearly 3 inches away. Her stomach churned. There are tunnels, she whispered. There are actual tunnels. She spent the next hour standing in the bathroom, experimenting with pressure points, gauging the path of the infection. It was like playing a grotesque version of Connect the Dots, except the dots hurt, and the lines were made of pus. She didn't cry, not yet. She didn't scream. She didn't even panic. Instead, she felt a strange sort of numbness, like her body had become an object, something separate from her. A problem to solve, a puzzle to decode. But underneath the numbness, fear was blooming. She started spraying perfume again, heavier this time. She began positioning herself carefully at work, always keeping her right side away from customers. She took calls with her phone in her left hand. She stopped hugging people. At night, she slept on her left side, careful not to disturb the dressing taped to her underarm. She changed it twice a day now. Gauze, ointment, medical tape. She'd gotten good at it. Too good. She kept the supplies in a small basket under her bathroom sink, labeled, organized, controlled. Sophie asked her once, over dinner, "Are you okay?" Lauren looked up from her plate, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. You've just seemed off, distant. And you're wearing sweaters in April." Lauren forced a smile. "I'm fine, just tired." Sophie didn't push. She never did. But the truth was, Lauren wasn't fine. She was terrified and ashamed, terrified that something was wrong, ashamed that she'd let it get this far, ashamed that the body she'd spent years sculpting and tending to like a temple was now betraying her in silence. She wanted to tell someone. She wanted to scream. She wanted to press rewind and go back to that first day in the shower when it was just one little bump, but she couldn't. She could only move forward, and whatever was under her skin was moving forward too. It happened at 2:43 a.m. Lauren sat up in bed, heart pounding, mouth dry, the sheets damp with sweat. She couldn't tell if she'd been dreaming or if the pain had pulled her out of sleep, but it didn't matter. It was real now. It was everywhere. The right side of her body felt like it had been lit on fire. Her armpit throbbed with such intensity that she gasped audibly, clutching her side. She swung her legs over the edge of the bed and tried to stand but doubled over immediately as a wave of nausea hit her. She stumbled to the bathroom, flicking on the light with a shaking hand. The moment her eyes met the mirror, she screamed. Her right underarm was grotesquely swollen, almost twice its normal size. The skin was shiny, stretched to its limit, a dark purplish red that turned to black in one horrifying patch in the center. She could see at least 7 distinct nodules now, some bulging like they might burst, others already leaking thick yellow fluid that dripped down her side. But that wasn't the worst part. The tunnels were visible now, not just something she could feel, but something she could see. Raised ridges crisscrossed under her skin like infected highways, pulsing faintly with every beat of her heart. One of them had split open on its own, oozing from both ends. Her knees buckled. She sank to the bathroom floor, shaking uncontrollably, trying to steady her breathing as her vision blurred. This was no longer manageable. This was no longer something she could hide under sweaters or treat with warm compresses. Her body was turning against her. She pressed the side of her head against the cool tile and tried to collect her thoughts, but her mind was spiraling. What if the infection spreads to my blood? What if the skin dies? What if it's already dying? The black patch, necrosis. She had read about it in the medical forums. She hadn't let herself believe it could happen to her, but there it was. Dead tissue, her own flesh, collapsing in on itself. She couldn't breathe. She needed help. "Sophie," she screamed, her voice cracking. "Sophie, help me." Within seconds, her bedroom door flew open and footsteps pounded toward the bathroom. Sophie appeared, wide-eyed, dressed in a t-shirt and boxer shorts, her hair a tangled mess from sleep. The moment she saw Lauren's arm, she froze. "Oh my God," Sophie whispered. Lauren looked up at her with wet, terrified eyes. Something's wrong. Something's really, really wrong." Sophie dropped to her knees beside her. Okay. It's okay. I've got you. We're going to the hospital." "I think it's dying," Lauren said, her voice hoarse. "My skin, it's turning black." Sophie didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her face said everything. She helped Lauren to her feet, wrapping a towel around her armpit to catch the constant drainage. It was soaked within seconds. The fluid was thick, yellow-green, and smelled faintly sweet, like something rotten. Sophie grabbed her car keys and a clean hoodie. "Come on, let's go." The drive to the hospital was a blur of stoplights and street lamps. Lauren curled in the passenger seat, biting her lip to stay conscious. Her vision tunneled with each heartbeat. The pain was a living thing now, snarling and clawing its way through her side. The towel had to be changed halfway through the drive. It was saturated. When they arrived at the emergency room at Northwestern Memorial, the triage nurse took one look and rushed her through. Doctors and nurses moved around her like a well-oiled machine, placing 4S, taking vitals, examining her under bright clinical lights. The attending physician introduced herself as Dr. Elena Ramirez. She was calm, focused, and direct. She examined Lauren's armpit with gloved hands, then looked her in the eye. "How long has this been going on?" Lauren's voice trembled. 7 months. I thought it was ingrown hairs." Dr. Ramirez didn't flinch. "This isn't ingrown hairs. What you have is called hidradenitis suppurativa. It's a chronic inflammatory condition that affects the sweat glands and hair follicles. Yours has progressed to a severe stage. You have multiple interconnected abscesses. And that black tissue, that's necrosis. The skin is dying." Lauren stared at her, mouth dry. "I know that sounds terrifying," Dr. Ramirez continued, "but you're here now. That's the most important thing. We're going to start you on strong 4 antibiotics immediately and get a surgical consult in to evaluate the area. But I want you to understand, this is serious. You're going to need surgery." Lauren looked over at Sophie, who had taken her hands somewhere during the explanation and hadn't let go. "I don't understand," Lauren whispered. "I take care of myself. I shower, I exfoliate, I do everything right." "This has nothing to do with hygiene. Dr. Ramirez said gently. HS isn't caused by being dirty, it's autoimmune and possibly genetic. It's not your fault. Not your fault. Lauren closed her eyes and let the tears fall freely now. Her whole body felt like it was unraveling. For 7 months she had tried to control it, to manage it alone, to cover it up and power through. Now she was in a hospital bed, wrapped in medical tape, an open wound leaking onto gauze pads. And someone was telling her that none of it was her fault. "I need to call my mom," she whispered. "You can do that after we stabilize you," Dr. Ramirez said kindly. "Right now I need to get you comfortable." Sophie squeezed her hand. "I'm staying. I'm not going anywhere." Lauren turned her face into the pillow and sobbed. She wasn't in control anymore. But maybe, for the first time, she didn't have to be. The hospital kept Lauren overnight for observation. She lay there under thin white sheets, 4 fluids dripping steadily into her arm, pain medication dulling the edges of her consciousness. Her armpit had been packed and dressed, and though the firestorm of pain had eased, a deep ache remained, a throbbing reminder of how far things had gone. She drifted in and out of shallow sleep, waking occasionally to the beep of machines and the quiet shuffle of nurses. In the morning, a new doctor arrived, Dr. Marcus Kearney, dermatology, late 40s, carefully groomed beard, the type of clipboard-carrying specialist who appeared like clockwork during hospital rounds. He examined her with clinical efficiency, barely glancing at her face. "You mentioned this started about 7 months ago?" Lauren nodded. "One bump, then more. They never went away." He frowned slightly. "How often do you shave your underarms?" "Every day," she replied. "I work in beauty retail. I have to look polished." He made a non-committal noise, scribbled something down. "That could be contributing. We see a lot of folliculitis in people who shave frequently." Lauren stared at him. "This isn't just irritation. There are tunnels under my skin. There's dead tissue." "Yes, well, recurrent folliculitis can lead to subcutaneous inflammation and sinus tract formation. I'll prescribe a stronger topical antibiotic and an antibacterial wash. You'll want to avoid shaving for a few weeks. Give the skin time to rest." "That's it?" she asked, incredulous. "You're not even considering hidradenitis suppurativa?" Dr. Kearney paused. "HS is rare and usually diagnosed based on clinical criteria over time. Let's not jump to conclusions." Her heart sank. He continued. "Take the medication. Follow up with your primary care doctor in a week. If there's no improvement, we can reevaluate." He left the room before she could say another word. Lauren stared at the ceiling, rage burning beneath her exhaustion. She had just been told she had tunnels in her skin. That part of her body was necrotic. And yet here was another doctor offering a wash, a cream, and the same tired advice: stop shaving. She felt invisible. That feeling would become familiar. Over the next several weeks, Lauren began what she would later call her medical tour of disappointment. Specialist after specialist, urgent care visits, dermatology clinics, all giving her variations of the same refrain: folliculitis, boils, maybe a staph infection. Here's a prescription. Follow up if it doesn't get better. It never got better. Sometimes it got worse. One physician prescribed a 10-day course of oral antibiotics. When it didn't help, another switched her to a different antibiotic. Still nothing. One doctor gave her a steroid cream for eczema. One day, in a moment of desperation, Lauren brought printed photos of her flare-ups, along with journal entries where she'd tracked the nodules, their drainage, the development of new tunnels. The doctor barely looked at them. "You're very diligent," he said, as if that were the problem. She left that office with a $200 bill and no answers. Each visit chipped away at her self-confidence. She started second-guessing everything. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe I'm just sensitive. Maybe it really is just folliculitis and I'm being dramatic. But deep down, she knew. This wasn't in her head. This was in her skin. It was in her bloodstream. It was under her arm, festering, connecting, spreading. She began to lose trust, not just in the doctors, but in herself. Who was she if even her instincts couldn't be trusted? For someone who had built her identity around control, around perfection, around appearing put together, this was a kind of slow psychological torture. The mirror became her enemy. Her armpit, a place she'd never even thought about before, was now the focal point of her shame. She stopped dating altogether. She deleted the apps. Ryan had texted a few times after she vanished from his life, but she never replied. What was she supposed to say? "Sorry, can't make dinner. I'm leaking pus through multiple sinus tracts in my body. No thank you." She worked fewer shifts at the boutique. using sick days and vague explanations. Even when she showed up, she wasn't herself. She layered perfume until it made her coworkers cough. She avoided changing in the employee lounge. She never raised her arms, never hugged anyone. She was disappearing from her own life. And all the while, the thing under her skin continued to grow. Somewhere, someone else was dealing with this too. Lauren knew that. She had seen the forums. Hundreds, no, thousands of posts from women and men describing the same hell. That's who this happens to. Not dirty people, not careless people, people like her. People who are told over and over again, it's just shaving, while their bodies quietly fall apart. She began to realize the pattern. The misunderstanding. Most doctors were trained to look for what was common, to treat what was visible. HS wasn't common, and it didn't always look dramatic. At first, that's what made it so easy to dismiss, but it was happening anyway. The truth was, most people with early-stage HS didn't even know they had it. They were told they had boils, or cystic acne, or irritation. They were handed creams, antibiotics, or advice to stop shaving, and by the time someone finally said the words, hidradenitis suppurativa, they were already scarred, physically, emotionally. Lauren had been one of them. Let's break it down. Who's dealing with this? People with recurring, painful bumps in areas of friction, armpits, groin, under breasts. People who are dismissed, mostly women, often young, often embarrassed. What stage are they in? Many are early, still believing it's just an ingrown hair. Some, like Lauren, are midway, managing multiple flare-ups and hiding the emotional toll. What are they misunderstanding? That this is their fault. That it's about hygiene. That it will go away on its own. That the doctor knows best, even when they say, just try a new deodorant. If they keep misunderstanding, it progresses. Tunnels form. Tissue dies. Surgery becomes the only option. Worse, self-worth crumbles. Relationships fracture. Life becomes smaller and smaller. So what's the solution? And when should it be used? The solution is awareness. Advocacy. Asking the right questions early. Demanding to be seen. HS needs early diagnosis and the right kind of care. Dermatologists who specialize in it, not generalists who assume. When is this not the solution? It's not about panic. It's not about assuming worst case from the first pimple. But if it keeps coming back, if it drains, if it connects under the skin, that's when it's time. And what should happen in the next 24 to 72 hours? If you recognize these signs, take photos. Log your symptoms. Find a dermatologist who knows HS. Bring documentation. Ask directly about hidradenitis suppurativa. Don't accept just folliculitis as an answer. Not anymore. Lauren didn't get those answers right away. She didn't get them in the hospital, or the first 2 clinics, or the third. It took a visit with Dr. Elijah Mendez, a soft-spoken wound care specialist at a university hospital, who finally looked at her chart, examined her armpit, and said, "Has anyone talked to you about HS?" Lauren's throat tightened. "Only me," she whispered. He nodded. "You're not wrong. I see this all the time. You're not alone. Not alone. It wasn't a cure. It wasn't even treatment. Yet. But it was a start. A crack of light through a long, long tunnel. The office was quiet, almost too quiet, with soft jazz playing low in the background and the distant hum of a ceiling vent. Lauren sat on the edge of the padded exam table, her arms folded protectively across her chest. It had taken her 3 weeks to get the referral. The wound care nurse at Northwestern had mentioned his name in passing, Dr. Elijah Mendez, dermatology specializing in chronic inflammatory skin disorders. Apparently, he didn't take many new patients, but Lauren had begged, cried. Actually, now here she was. Dr. Mendez entered without fanfare. Late 40s, maybe early 50s, with salt and pepper hair, and a slow, deliberate way of moving that immediately made her feel like she wasn't being rushed. He smiled kindly and introduced himself. No clipboard, no laptop between them, just eye contact. "I've read your chart," he said, settling onto a stool. "I've also read your notes. You're very thorough." Lauren blinked. "You actually read them?" "Of course. It's important to listen to the person living inside the body." That shouldn't have felt revolutionary, but it did. She relaxed just a fraction. "Can I take a look?" he asked. She nodded and slipped off her cardigan, exposing her right underarm. The scarring was raw and uneven, the healing wound still tender and red. A small section had begun draining again over the past 2 days, which she tried to hide under fresh gauze, now stained. Dr. Mendez examined it gently, silently. He asked if he could palpate certain areas, warning her before each touch. He checked for other areas, her left underarm, the space under her breast. Lauren held her breath. He didn't recoil, didn't frown in confusion. He just looked like he understood. When he was done, he sat back and folded his hands in his lap. "Lauren, has anyone officially diagnosed you with hidradenitis suppurativa?" She felt a lump rise in her throat. "No. One doctor mentioned it. Everyone else said folliculitis, or boils, or shaving irritation." "Well," he said softly, "I can tell you definitively, it's HS." The words hung in the air like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. She stared at him, expression unreadable. "This is stage 2, he continued. "You've got multiple recurring nodules, some tunneling, some scarring. It's classic. It's also, unfortunately, not uncommon for it to go undiagnosed for a long time. Most people wait 7 to 10 years for a correct diagnosis." Lauren let out a hollow laugh. "So I'm ahead of schedule." "In a way, yes," he said gently. "And I'm sorry. For the pain. For the confusion. For the way you were dismissed." Something inside her cracked. All the months of being brushed aside, told she was overreacting, being offered creams and half-hearted explanations, none of it had prepared her for someone finally telling her the truth. It didn't feel good. It felt like grief, like someone had pulled back the curtain and exposed everything she'd been afraid to admit. "So what now?" she asked. "You cut it out of me?" "We've already removed part of the worst area," he said, referencing the surgery at Northwestern. "But yes, we'll need to finish the excision around the remaining tunnels. And possibly look at the left side too. It's showing early signs." Lauren blinked rapidly. "It's already spreading?" "It's common," he said. "HS is bilateral in many patients. But this doesn't mean it's hopeless. There are things we can do." He pulled up a tablet and showed her a diagram. Layers of skin, sweat glands, follicles. He explained how the disease likely started. Follicular occlusion, triggering an immune response, leading to inflammation, infection, tunneling. None of it was her fault. Not her deodorant, not her razors, not her hygiene. "You could shower 5 times a day and still have this," he said. "HS doesn't care how clean you are. It's autoimmune, genetic, sometimes hormonal. The way we talk about it needs to change." Lauren swallowed hard. "You're sure? I've been treating HS for almost 20 years. I've seen every variation. I've seen patients who looked exactly like you. Same pain, same shame, same journey. I'm sure." Her jaw clenched. "Why didn't anyone else see it?" she asked, voice tight. "Because they weren't looking," he replied. "Most doctors aren't trained to recognize it early. It's not taught well, it's misunderstood. And to be honest, some don't listen as closely as they should." Lauren stared at the floor. "You're not crazy," he added. "You're not being dramatic. And you're not alone." That was the part that undid her. She hadn't realized how deeply alone she'd felt until someone told her she wasn't. Tears slid down her cheeks before she could stop them. She wiped them away quickly, embarrassed. "I've been hiding it," she whispered. "Every day. Long sleeves, no dating, constant shame." "I know," he said. "That's the hardest part. HS doesn't just damage the skin, it wounds the identity." She nodded, unable to speak. "There's no cure," he continued. "Let's be honest about that. But we can manage it. Some patients do incredibly well with lifestyle changes, diet, laser hair removal, stress reduction. Others need medication, immunosuppressants, sometimes biologics. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. So how do I know what works for me? We start with surgery, finish removing the tunnels, then we monitor. You'll come in regularly. We track flare-ups. You'll keep a journal. We'll try different approaches, but you won't do it alone." Lauren exhaled slowly. For the first time in months, the breath didn't catch in her throat. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay." Dr. Mendez smiled. "We'll schedule surgery for next week. I'll have my nurse walk you through the prep. It won't be easy, but you're already doing the hardest part. You're showing up." As she stood to leave, he handed her a printed packet of resources: HS education, support groups, dietary tips. At the top was a quote, "You are not what your skin endures." She tucked it into her purse and walked out of the office. The sun was bright outside, and for once she didn't flinch from it. She had a name for what was happening to her now. It wasn't an answer she wanted, but it was an answer she needed. Lauren didn't sleep the night before surgery. Her mother, Janice, had flown in from Seattle that afternoon. suitcase in one hand and tears barely contained behind her reading glasses. They hadn't always been close. Janice was practical, reserved, the kind of woman who believed in solving problems, not sitting with them. But as soon as she saw her daughter in that hospital bed, pale and frightened, she dropped her purse and wrapped her in a hug that didn't let go. "My baby," she whispered, brushing Lauren's hair back. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Lauren had no answer. How do you explain shame to someone who's never worn it like armor? "I thought it was nothing," she said finally. "I thought I could fix it." Janice sat beside her all evening, helping her fill out surgical forms, gently holding her hand through the placement, even cracking jokes about the awful hospital food. They talked quietly about childhood memories, the way Lauren used to pretend to be a makeup artist on her dolls, how she always insisted her socks matched her hair bows. It helped, just a little. The next morning, they wheeled her into the operating suite at 7:45 a.m. The room was cold, sterile, and bathed in harsh fluorescent light. Machines beeped softly. Stainless steel instruments glinted under the surgical lamps. Lauren stared at the ceiling, heart racing, as the anesthesiologist leaned over her. "You'll feel sleepy in just a moment," he said kindly. "Count backwards from 10. She made it to 7. When she woke, the pain came first, not the sharp kind, but deep and heavy, like someone had hollowed out part of her body and left behind a wound that hummed with each breath. She blinked against the brightness of the recovery room. Her mother's face came into focus first, red-eyed, smiling. "You're okay," Janice said softly. "You made it through." A nurse checked her vitals. Another adjusted the bandages. She couldn't see the wound, just layers of thick, white gauze wrapped tightly from her collarbone down to the side of her ribcage. Something was attached to her. A small clear bulb with tubing. "What is that?" she mumbled, voice dry and groggy. "Drain," the nurse said, "to pull excess fluid from the wound site. Totally normal." Normal. There was nothing normal about this. Dr. Mendez visited later that afternoon. "The surgery went well," he said. "We excised a section of tissue roughly 5 inches wide. The tunnels were extensive, but we believe we got all of them. No sign of secondary infection." Lauren nodded slowly. "How long until I'm okay?" He gave a small smile. "The wound will be left open. It needs to heal from the inside out. We'll change dressings daily, maybe more at first. Could be several weeks, possibly months." She didn't ask about scars. That answer was already written across the bandages. Later that evening, Janice helped her to the bathroom for the first time. It was awkward, painful, humiliating. Lauren leaned heavily on her mother's arm as they moved down the hallway, the drain bulb bouncing softly at her side. When she caught her reflection in the mirror, she turned away. "I'm not ready," she whispered. "You don't have to be," Janice replied, gently guiding her back to bed. The first dressing change was the hardest. 2 nurses came in the next morning with warm hands and soft voices. They warned her. It would hurt. They were right. As they peeled back the layers of gauze, Lauren turned her face toward the wall, gripping the side of the bed. Then she looked. Just once. The wound was oval-shaped, raw and glistening, surrounded by puckered skin and stitched edges. The fat beneath her skin was visible, yellow-white and uneven. The tunnels were gone, but their path remained, a crater where her flesh had once been. She gasped. "Oh my God," she whispered. "It's a hole. There's a hole in my body." "It's clean," the nurse said reassuringly. "Very healthy healing tissue. No signs of necrosis. That bright red, that's blood flow. That's good." But Lauren couldn't hear her. All she could see was absence, the empty space where her skin used to be. She didn't cry until the nurses left. Janice held her while she sobbed into the pillow, breath hitching, heart breaking. "I look disgusting," she said. "No one's ever going to want to touch me again." "Don't you dare say that," her mother said, her voice tight with emotion. "You are strong. You are healing. This is not the end of anything." But Lauren didn't believe it. Not yet. The days that followed blurred together. Pain medication dulled the worst of it, but every movement hurt. Her right arm had limited range. Lifting it felt like pulling stitches through fire. The drain had to be emptied twice a day. The dressing changes became routine, but never easy. Janice stayed in the hospital room with her, sleeping on the pull-out couch, braiding her hair, rubbing her back when she couldn't sleep. She told her stories from her own youth, confessions Lauren had never heard before. "You know," Janice said one night, "when I was 26, I had to have surgery on my breast. A tumor. Benign, but they had to remove part of the tissue. I had a scar, too, still do. Lauren blinked. I never knew that. Janice shrugged. We don't talk about these things. Maybe we should. They sat in silence after that. The kind of silence that wraps around two people like a blanket. By week 2, Lauren was strong enough to walk short distances on her own. The drain was still in, but her appetite had returned. She could brush her teeth without help. She could sit up without crying. Small victories. Dr. Mendez checked in often, pleased with her progress. The healing is on track, he said one morning, examining the wound with practiced eyes. No sign of infection. I'm optimistic you won't need a graft. Lauren nodded, tired but grateful. The emotional healing was slower. Sometimes she'd catch herself instinctively reaching for a tank top, then remember. Sometimes she'd scroll through old photos, her in sleeveless dresses, arms raised, smiling, and feel an ache deeper than the surgical site. Her body had changed. Her identity had shifted. She wasn't the perfectly polished woman from Michigan Avenue anymore. But maybe that wasn't all bad. One afternoon, a nurse named Jasmine asked if Lauren wanted to try dressing the wound herself. Just a trial. Just to see. Lauren hesitated, then nodded. Jasmine guided her step by step. Glove up, gently peel back, assess drainage, rinse, repack. Lauren's hands trembled, but she did it. Start to finish. When she was done, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. The scar was still there. The wound was still healing. But she had touched it, cared for it, faced it. It was part of her now, not a secret, not a shame, a wound, a process, a truth. That night, she journaled for the first time in weeks. Just one line, I am still here. The last of the dressings came off on a Thursday morning. It had been 7 weeks since the surgery. 7 weeks of wound care, daily gauze changes, gauze pads, drainage logs, checkups, and cautious hope. The skin had finally sealed over. Not smooth, never smooth again, but sealed. A patch of pink, puckered scar tissue stretched from the curve of her underarm down toward the side of her breast. It looked like a burn, or maybe a bite. It didn't look like her, but it was. Lauren stood in front of the mirror in her childhood bedroom, where she'd returned to recover, and examined herself in silence. She lifted her arm slowly. The scar pulled slightly. It always would. The doctors had warned her about tightness, nerve sensitivity, potential numbness in parts of the skin. But all she could think was, it's closed. That night, she sat in bed scrolling through her phone. She hadn't been active online in months. Her Instagram page still showed the polished version of her old self, perfect makeup, flattering angles, sleeveless summer dresses from another life. She almost didn't recognize the girl smiling back at her from those filtered squares. Her finger hovered over the delete account button, then paused. Instead, she opened Google and typed a phrase she hadn't searched since before the surgery. Hidradenitis suppurativa support group. Dozens of results flooded in. Some were clinical forums, others casual Reddit threads, Facebook groups, subreddits, even Instagram pages dedicated to awareness and education. She clicked on one, a private Facebook group with nearly 30,000 members. HS Warriors, Support, and Stories. She requested to join, not expecting much. The approval came within an hour. Inside, it was a different world. People of all ages, from all over the world, sharing photos, asking questions, venting frustrations, celebrating tiny victories. Someone had finally convinced their dermatologist to take them seriously. Someone else had just had their first surgery. A woman in her 30s posted about going on her first date in years, scar proudly visible in a tank top. Lauren scrolled for hours, heart pounding, eyes stinging. It was like watching versions of herself scattered across the internet, raw, unfiltered, real. It was terrifying and oddly comforting. These people weren't hiding. They were living, not despite HS but with it. She didn't post that first night. Instead, she read. Every story felt like someone reaching through the screen to say, I see you. I've been there. You're not crazy. You're not alone. She cried quietly under the covers, phone glowing in her hand. Over the next few days, Lauren became a regular lurker in the group. She commented here and there, offering gentle encouragement. She posted once with a short message. Just had my first wide excision surgery. Healing, scared, but grateful to be taken seriously for once. The response was overwhelming. Dozens of comments poured in. You're so brave. It gets easier, I promise. Sending healing energy from Texas. DM me if you ever need to vent. Proud of you. We don't hear that enough. You're not alone. Not alone. 2 words that had carried her through the darkest parts of recovery. 2 words she now heard from strangers who knew her pain better than any friend ever had. That week she opened her notes app and started typing. She didn't plan to post it, not at first. It started as a journal entry. But as the words poured out, she realized she was writing something bigger. She wrote about the first bump, about denial, the shame, the Googling, the wrong diagnoses, the way her life shrank around the pain, the surgery, the scar. She didn't dramatize it, but she didn't soften it either. It was raw, honest. She ended it with one line: "This is my body now. It's not what I expected, but it's still mine, and I'm done hiding." She stared at it for a long time. Then she opened Instagram for the first time in months. She didn't post a selfie. She posted a photo of her right side, arm lifted slightly, the scar fully visible, wrapped in soft evening light from her bedroom window. No filters, no makeup, just truth. She added the caption and pressed post. Then she turned off her phone and walked away. It took exactly 13 minutes for her phone to buzz, then again, and again. By the next morning, the post had over 4,000 likes, more than 600 comments. Messages flooded in. "I think I have this and didn't even know. Thank you. I'm crying. I've never seen someone talk about this so openly. My sister has HS. She hides in sweatshirts even in summer. I'm sending her this. This is the bravest thing I've seen on here in a long time. Thank you for helping me feel less disgusting." Lauren read every single one. Her fingers shook as she typed her replies. "Thank you. You're not alone. I see you. I believe you." A few days later, a health and wellness blogger messaged her asking to share her post. Then a local news site. Then a women's health magazine. They wanted to interview her, not as a victim, but as a voice. She hesitated, then said yes. The interviews were nerve-wracking at first. Lauren had never imagined herself as an advocate. She didn't feel particularly brave. Most days she was still relearning how to lift her arm without wincing. But she spoke anyway. She talked about diagnosis delays, about how HS destroys more than skin, about how the shame is often worse than the pain, about how important it is to believe people when they say they're suffering. And people listened. She got more DMs, emails, even a handwritten letter from a teenager in Utah who said she printed Lauren's post and showed it to her doctor. She finally got a diagnosis. That was the moment everything changed. Lauren realized her pain hadn't been wasted. It had turned into something else, something useful. 1 month later, she was invited to speak at a local HS support group in Chicago. 23 people showed up, all ages, all backgrounds, some with bandages peeking out from under their sleeves, others with scars they didn't bother to hide. They sat in a circle, sipping coffee from paper cups, eyes bright with recognition as she began to speak. "I know what it's like to feel ashamed of your body," she said, "to think you're dirty, broken, unlovable. I spent months hiding. I almost didn't make it to the doctor in time. But I'm here now, and so are you. That means something." Heads nodded. Eyes welled. This isn't just about skin. It's about who we are when we don't look like we used to. When people look away. When even doctors don't believe us. But this community, this space, we believe each other. And that makes all the difference. After the meeting, a girl no older than 20 approached her, clutching a folder and visibly shaking. "I have it too," she whispered. "Groin area. I haven't told anyone. I'm scared." Lauren didn't flinch. She reached out and gently took the girl's hand. "You're not alone." 1 year after surgery, Lauren stood in front of a conference room filled with people, dermatologists, nurse practitioners, patient advocates, and a few nervous-looking young adults sitting near the back. She wasn't wearing a blazer. She wasn't hiding her scar. Her sleeveless navy blouse revealed it clearly, a pale slash of memory carved into her side. She took a breath, stepped up to the microphone and smiled. "My name is Lauren Miller," she began, "and I was misdiagnosed for almost 8 months. I was told it was just shaving, just stress, just in my head. What I had was hidradenitis suppurativa. What I needed was someone to believe me." The room was quiet. No phones out, no coughs, just the hush of people listening. She'd spoken at events before. Small HS support groups, local health panels, one women's college seminar on invisible illnesses. But this was the first time she'd spoken directly to medical professionals. She told them about the first bump, the tunnels, the ER visit, the crater in her skin. She told them about shame so thick she forgot what her own voice sounded like. And then she told them about hope, about finding a community online, about getting her diagnosis, about surviving surgery, and learning to love the reflection she used to avoid. If there's one thing I ask of you, she said, it's to listen. Not just to what your patients say, but to what they're trying to say. HS doesn't just scar the skin, it scars lives. But with the right care, we can heal. Applause followed her final words, warm and genuine. Afterward, a young nurse approached her, misty-eyed. I've seen patients with these symptoms before, she said. I don't think I knew what I was looking at, but I will now. Thank you. Lauren nodded. That's why I'm here. Her life didn't return to what it had been before. It transformed into something entirely new. She didn't go back to the boutique on Michigan Avenue. She resigned with a letter that thanked them for their patience and explained gently that she had outgrown the mirror. Instead, she took a part-time job as a patient coordinator for a dermatology clinic in Chicago, a different one that specialized in chronic conditions like HS. She helped patients feel seen from the moment they walked through the door. She knew how to ask the questions doctors often forgot. She knew how to say the right thing when someone's voice trembled with shame, and she started writing articles, social media posts, interviews. She collaborated with nonprofits to build awareness campaigns, including one called More Than My Skin, which featured stories and portraits of people living with HS. Her scar was front and center in the promo image. The first time she saw it on a bus stop ad, she laughed out loud, loud enough to make people turn and stare. She wasn't embarrassed. She was proud. Lauren also became a mentor in several online HS communities. When newly diagnosed patients reached out, terrified, overwhelmed, broken, she responded with honesty and empathy. It's okay to grieve, she would write. It's okay to be angry. But this diagnosis doesn't end your story. It begins a new one. Some days were still hard. She still had flare-ups, though less often now, thanks to laser hair removal and an anti-inflammatory diet. She avoided sugar and dairy, logged symptoms religiously, took her medication on schedule, and saw Dr. Mendez every 3 months like clockwork. They had become more than doctor and patient. He was a supporter, a friend, someone who had helped her save herself when she didn't know where to begin. Once, during a follow-up, he asked, "Do you remember what you said the day I diagnosed you?" Lauren frowned. "No, you said, so this is forever?" She nodded. "Yeah, that sounds about right." And I said, "It's part of your life, not all of it." She smiled. "And you were right." She still thought about Ryan sometimes, the almost relationship that never got the chance to begin. She didn't blame him for walking away. He hadn't known what to do, and she hadn't been ready to explain. But now she could explain. And she did, openly, to anyone who asked. Not every date went well. Some men recoiled when she mentioned a chronic condition. Others asked inappropriate questions. But one, months later, didn't flinch when she showed him her scar. He kissed the skin beside it and said, "You're stronger than anyone I've ever met." She didn't fall in love overnight, but for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that love was possible again, that she was not too damaged, not less worthy, that her body, even marked and healing and still changing, was hers, whole. Her favorite moments were still the quiet ones, sitting on her porch in the morning sipping coffee in a tank top, no pressure, no makeup, no sleeves. The breeze on her scar, a reminder of everything she'd survived. Sometimes she caught her reflection in a shop window and smiled, not because she looked perfect, but because she looked like herself. In the fall, she was invited to participate in a roundtable at a national dermatology conference in Boston. They asked her to represent the patient voice, to speak directly to physicians about what she wished they knew sooner. She told them, "HS doesn't look the same on everyone. It doesn't start with explosions. It starts small, with whispers, a bump, a sting, a secret. Don't wait until it's screaming to listen." After the panel, a group of dermatology residents gathered around her, full of questions. She answered everyone, patiently, passionately, with the kind of knowledge that only comes from living it. One of them, a young woman, said, "You're the reason I want to do this kind of work." Lauren blinked back tears. "Then keep going. We need you." Back home, she updated her blog with a new post. The title, "From Pain to Purpose, What HS Taught Me About Power." She wrote, "There was a time when I believed my worth was in my smooth skin, my polished appearance, my ability to keep things pretty and perfect. HS took that away. piece by piece, until all that was left was the raw truth of who I am. And I thought I had lost everything. But what I gained? Oh, I gained a community. I gained compassion. I gained a new way to measure strength, not by how flawless I could be, but by how honest I was willing to become. I don't hide anymore. Not my scars, not my voice, not my story. If you're reading this and you've been hiding too, please know this. You are not broken. You are not dirty. You are not alone. This is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your power. She hit publish without hesitation. Then she closed her laptop, walked outside, and lifted her arms to the sky. She was here, she was whole, and she was ready for whatever came next. If you're watching this, I need you to hear something, clearly, urgently, now. That bump you've been ignoring, the one that shows up in the same spot, again and again, the one you told yourself was just shaving irritation or just stress. It might not be just a pimple, or a boil, or bad luck. It might be hidradenitis suppurativa, and if it is, it will not wait for you to be ready. It won't wait for a more convenient time. It won't ask your permission to spread. It won't care that you have a job, a date, a vacation next week. It will grow, quietly, relentlessly, just like it did with me. I ignored the first sign, then the second, then the fifth. I Googled, I rationalized, I blamed my razor, my deodorant, my anxiety. I told no one, not even myself. And by the time I admitted something was wrong, I had tunnels under my skin. Dead tissue. Surgery, a scar the size of my hand. But here's the part they don't tell you. The worst wound wasn't the one they cut out of me. It was the silence, the isolation, the shame of thinking I was the only one. I'm not, you're not. Hidradenitis suppurativa affects up to 4% of the population. That's millions of people. Most go undiagnosed for years, years of pain, years of hiding, years of hearing it's nothing from people who should know better. Not because they're bad people, but because they've never been taught what to look for. So let me be clear, for you, for them, for everyone. If you have recurring lumps in your armpits, groin, under your breasts, or anywhere sweat and friction live, if those lumps drain, scar, connect under the skin, if they're affecting not just your body, but your confidence, your relationships, your joy, you deserve answers. You deserve to be seen. You deserve better. Start documenting. Take photos, write dates, track the pain. Then walk into your next appointment and say the words out loud. I want to be evaluated for hidradenitis suppurativa. Say it even if your voice shakes. Say it especially if they brush you off. Say it until someone listens. And if they don't, find someone who will. There are specialists. There are communities. There is treatment. There is hope. I'm not telling you this as a doctor, or a YouTuber, or someone selling miracle creams. I'm telling you this as someone who almost waited too long. As someone who woke up one night to find part of her body rotting. As someone who thought a scar would be the end of her story, and found out it was the beginning. My name is Lauren Miller. I have HS. I have a scar. I have pain sometimes, fear sometimes, but also pride, purpose, people, because once I stopped hiding, the world stopped feeling so small. Once I spoke, others did too. And now we speak together. So if you're still silent, let this be your sign. Don't wait 7 months. Don't wait 7 years. Don't wait at all. Speak up, show up, fight back. Because you are more than what's under your skin. You are more than what bleeds, drains, or scars. You are not broken. You are not disgusting. You are not alone. And if this story made your heart race, if it made you remember a bump, or a time you felt dismissed, or a body you thought betrayed you, then don't scroll past this moment, like this video. Subscribe for more stories that matter. Comment below. Have you ever had a health concern dismissed? Have you heard of HS before today? Do you know someone who needs to see this? And more importantly, share this. Share it with someone who's been quiet for too long. Share it with a friend, a sister, a coworker. Share it because it might save someone from the worst kind of wound, the kind no one sees. Because your voice, it's louder than HS. And your story, it's just beginning.
Thank you for staying until the end with Return to Life. If you found a sense of connection or a small spark of hope, carry it with you as you return to everyday life. We look forward to seeing you in the stories ahead.